The little girl's voice was barely louder than the rustle of leaves dancing in the warm afternoon breeze, yet it stopped one of the most powerful men in the city in his tracks. "You forgot your lunch, Daddy." For a moment, time seemed to freeze. The billionaire CEO, standing beside a line of black luxury cars, slowly turned around. His polished shoes reflected the sunlight. His expensive watch glimmered. Assistants hurried around him carrying files, security guards watched from a distance, and reporters waited near the entrance of the newly opened children's center, yet none of them mattered, because standing behind him was a tiny little girl holding a paper lunch bag against her chest, looking up at him with hopeful eyes, and she was calling him Daddy. Before we continue, if you believe kindness can change lives and that second chances sometimes arrive when we least expect them, please take a moment to like this video, leave a comment, share it with someone who needs inspiration today, and subscribe to Lifeline Corner for more emotional stories that touch the heart. The CEO's name was Alaric Vance. At 46 years old, he had built one of the largest technology companies in the country. Newspapers called him a genius. Business magazines called him unstoppable. Investors called him a visionary, but there was another name he secretly called himself: alone. Despite his fortune, his penthouse overlooking the city felt empty every night. Despite the awards decorating his office walls, he often found himself staring out the window wondering why success felt so cold. Years earlier, he had lost the woman he loved in a tragic accident. They had dreamed of building a family together. They had chosen names for children who never got the chance to be born. After her death, Alaric buried himself in work. The company grew, the money multiplied, the loneliness deepened. Now, standing outside the children's center, he looked down at the little girl who had mistaken him for someone else. She couldn't have been older than 6. That her dark curls framed a face that seemed far too familiar. Before he could speak, a woman rushed across the courtyard. Her face was pale with panic. The moment she reached the child, she knelt beside her and gently pulled her close. The woman apologized repeatedly. She explained that her daughter often confused strangers with her father, especially men wearing business suits, especially men who looked successful, especially men who carried themselves with confidence, because the little girl barely remembered what her real father looked like. That he had disappeared years ago, without a goodbye. Without an explanation, without ever coming back. The woman introduced herself as Maribel Hart. The little girl's name was Nova. Alaric expected the encounter to end there. A brief misunderstanding. A strange moment. A memory quickly forgotten. Instead, something happened that he couldn't explain. As Maribel and Nova walked away, Nova turned back. The lunch bag remained clutched in her tiny hands, and for just a second, she smiled at him. A simple smile, yet it followed him all day. Back at headquarters, surrounded by executives discussing million-dollar projects, Alaric found himself distracted. He kept remembering the little girl's voice, the way she had said Daddy, not demanding, not confused, hopeful. As though she truly believed someone would turn around and choose to stay. That evening, curiosity led him to ask one of his assistants about the children's center. He learned something unexpected. Maribel worked there as a volunteer. The center itself was struggling financially, funding had nearly disappeared, several community programs faced closure, meals for low-income children were being reduced, educational activities were being cancelled. The news unsettled him. The next morning, without informing the media, Alaric returned. He arrived quietly. No reporters. No photographers. No announcements, just a man walking into a building filled with laughter. Nova spotted him almost immediately. Her face lit up like sunshine breaking through storm clouds. She ran toward him before stopping halfway. Remembering her mother's warning about strangers, the hesitation in her eyes broke something inside him. Children should never have to question whether someone will leave. Over the following weeks, Alaric became a regular visitor. At first he donated supplies, then computers, then books. Soon he found himself spending entire afternoons helping with activities, something he had never imagined doing. The children adored him, the staff respected him, but Nova attached herself to him in a way that frightened and warmed him at the same time. She would save him a seat during lunch, she would draw pictures and leave them on his desk, she would proudly show him every achievement, every sticker, every tiny success, and every time she smiled, he felt a little less alone. Meanwhile, Maribel remained cautious. Life had taught her not to trust promises, especially from wealthy people, especially from men. Years earlier, Nova's father had promised forever. Instead, he vanished when responsibility became Inconvenient, Maribel had spent years working multiple jobs, sacrificing sleep, sacrificing comfort, sacrificing everything to give her daughter a decent life. Trust did not come easily anymore, yet she couldn't ignore what she saw. Alaric never sought attention, that he never brought cameras, that he never made speeches. When he helped quietly. When he gave without conditions, and most importantly, he never disappointed Nova. For the first time in years, Maribel began lowering the walls around her heart. Then everything changed. One rainy afternoon, Nova collapsed during an activity. The room erupted into panic. Teachers rushed forward, children began crying. Maribel arrived moments later, terrified. At the hospital, doctors delivered devastating news. Nova had a rare medical condition affecting her heart. Treatment was available, but it was expensive, far beyond anything Maribel could afford. The cost felt impossible, the diagnosis felt cruel. For days, Maribel sat beside Nova's hospital bed fighting tears. She smiled when her daughter looked at her, she cried when she was alone. She prepared herself for the possibility that love might not be enough. Then Alaric walked into the hospital room. He listened quietly. He asked questions. He spoke with specialists, and before leaving, he made a promise: Nova would receive the best treatment available. And no matter what it cost. Maribel protested. She insisted she couldn't accept such generosity. Alaric simply smiled, because deep down, he knew this wasn't charity anymore. This was family, not by blood, not by law, but by choice. The following months became a battle: surgeries, recovery, setbacks, fear, hope. Some days brought progress, others brought uncertainty. Yet throughout it all, Alaric never left. He attended appointments, read stories beside hospital beds, celebrated small victories, held Maribel's hand during difficult moments, and slowly, the bond between them became impossible to deny. One evening, after Nova had fallen asleep, Maribel found herself standing beside Alaric near the hospital window. Rain tapped softly against the glass, the city lights shimmered below. For a long moment neither spoke. Then Maribel admitted something she had never told anyone: she was tired, not physically, emotionally, tired of carrying every burden alone, tired of pretending she wasn't afraid, tired of believing no one would ever stay. Alaric understood, because he carried the same exhaustion, the exhaustion of loneliness, the exhaustion of success without connection, the exhaustion of surviving instead of living. For the first time in years, neither felt alone. Months later, Nova's health finally improved. Doctors smiled instead of worrying, tests showed progress, recovery became reality. The day she was discharged, the entire children's center organized a celebration. Balloons floated through the courtyard, children laughed, music filled the air. The community gathered to welcome Nova home. As everyone celebrated, Nova disappeared for a moment. When she returned, she carried a familiar paper lunch bag, the same kind she had held on the day she first met Alaric. The crowd watched curiously. She walked directly toward him, her tiny hands trembled slightly. Then she handed him the bag. Inside was a simple sandwich. A drawing, and a handwritten note. The drawing showed 3 people holding hands beneath a bright sun. The note contained only a few words: "Thank you for staying." The entire courtyard fell silent. Alaric stared at the picture, his vision blurred. For years he had believed success meant building companies, building wealth, building influence, yet the greatest thing he had ever built was trust inside the heart of a little girl. If this story is touching your heart, please take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Lifeline Corner. Your support helps keep meaningful stories like this alive and allows more people to experience messages of hope, kindness, and compassion. And now, dear viewers, I have one special request: please comment. Kindness changes lives. If you believe one act of love can transform someone's future forever. 1 year later, another gathering took place at the Children's Center. This time there were no hospital fears. No uncertainty, only joy. The community celebrated the opening of a new educational wing funded entirely by Alaric's foundation. Children explored classrooms, parents smiled, volunteers cheered, and standing in the center of it all were Alaric, Maribel, and Nova, not because life had become perfect, not because pain had never existed, but because they had discovered something stronger than loss. They had discovered belonging. As the afternoon sun bathed the courtyard in golden light, Nova slipped her small hand into Alaric's. This time she didn't whisper, she smiled proudly and looked up at him, and although no one heard exactly what she said, everyone saw the tears filling his eyes, because some families are connected by blood, and some are connected by the courage to stay when everyone else leaves. Years earlier, Alaric had believed he had everything except happiness. Now he understood the truth. The richest man in the city had never been the CEO millionaire. The richest man was the one holding the hand of a little girl who no longer wondered if someone would come back, and under the warm daylight, surrounded by love, laughter, and second chances, Alaric finally realized that the family he had spent years searching for had found him first. The end.